Hope everybody is well. Thanks for being here, and thank you for your continued support. We would really appreciate a like and subscribe. We're coming up to 3,000 subscribers. Thank you. Today the subject is Herbert von Karajan and his recordings on vinyl, Deutsche Grammophon in particular. The great Austrian conductor recorded 1,000 LPs, many mono, and for EMI, and also some super audiophile recordings for Decca when he first began his career. Many of them are valued both as performance and recording. His hundreds with DG, much less so. But today I'd like to focus on his recordings, some 300 of them for Deutsche Grammophon. Specifically my favorites, not just as a huge fan of Karajan, his interpretations and his great orchestra, but those that sound good too. Karajan, driver of Porsches, flyer of Learjets, loved technology and dabbled in all the latest audio and video gear. With his best friend, Sony's CEO Norio Oga, he collected all the latest gear and insisted on recording audio and directing video his way. Unfortunately, many of his recordings bear the mark of too many cooks, and some great performances were ruined by the maestro not staying where he would serve the music best, on the podium. Such was his influence, he gave his friend an ultimatum that the newfangled Sony CD technology have an 80-minute playing time to allow his famous performance of Beethoven's Ninth Symphony to be played without a break. Karajan's interference in the recording booth led to too many recordings ruined by too much spotlighting, too much reverb, a distinct lack of bass, and nowhere near enough hall. In fact, his favorite recording space, Berlin's Jesus Christ Church, was quite reverberant. Kingsway and Boston Symphony Hall it ain't. So, if I am to choose some Karajan DGs for you to enjoy, they'll be from the 1960s or early 70s, invariably. Once the digital word was emblazoned all over DG recordings in the early 80s, I believe it went even more downhill from there. Even classic DG recordings in the great halls of Boston and Vienna lacked the power, bass, and finesse of the great Deccas and RCAs from those very same halls. However, the recordings I am choosing have great repertoire, exceptional benchmark performances in very good sound, good enough for audiophiles to enjoy on a well-set-up vinyl front end. And as you won't be paying a premium for these used, no harm, no foul. With the understanding that I'm a giant fanboy, let's begin. So, let's start with this one. I actually use this one as an audiophile test record. I'll tell you what I use it for. This is, I'm not sure, I think it was the late 60s, the Dvorak Cello Concerto with the fantastic Mstislav Rostropovich on cello, and the Tchaikovsky Rococo Variations, which is actually my favorite cello work. It's very beautiful. Not as famous as the Dvorak, but very good. You can buy this record and really enjoy it. Okay, let me tell you what I use it for. It's not even the vaunted tulips, done in tube gear, so this is a little bit later. At the beginning of the Rococo Variations, there's a horn solo. And for whatever reason, the team really got the horn sound absolutely perfect. The player is Gerd Seifert. He was a longtime principal horn of the Berlin Phil, a magnificent player. And he could change his sound on a dime. And he does so in this solo. So it goes from this very focused, brassy, cuivre, they call it, cuivre sound, to this very kind of white noise sound and very hollow sound. And the better I found my turntable as I've graduated to better turntables over the years, I've heard more and more into that sound. So at the very beginning of the piece. So that's a great one for audiophiles to buy. Great performances, you won't find any better. The orchestra is fantastic, and of course, Rostropovich's cello playing is amazing. But the sound is very good. Dare I say, audiophile. Up next is an absolutely magnificent Sibelius Fifth Symphony. I would posit the best Fifth Symphony ever recorded. Primarily because of the orchestral playing. Karajan was a great orchestral trainer, had very high standards, and no matter what all this revisionism about Karajan and this and that about him, there's no doubt about it, he had the best orchestra, and he trained them in a very wonderful way. They had a glorious sound. Unfortunately, his recordings don't always capture that. This one does. Again, I'm sure it's in the Jesus Christ Church in Dahlem, a part of Berlin. It's very reverberant, but for some reason, the spotlighting is not as much. The playing is absolutely to die for. Listen very carefully to the opening of Sibelius Fifth. It's very difficult to conduct and very difficult to play. It's got to be very free with rubato, but firm at the same time. If that makes sense, it doesn't make sense, but that's much of Sibelius's music. It doesn't make sense on the page. You have to make sense of it. And Karajan and his players are sublime here. The beginning starts with a horn call, and I've never heard it played better, maybe by Gerd Seifert or the other principal horn. Then it has these little woodwind flourishes, starts with oboes, clarinets, and then flutes. Listen carefully to the flute vibrato at the opening. It's absolutely glorious, and you hear everything. So again, I wouldn't say it's it's an audiophile test record, but it's one of the ones I used for orchestral timbres, and I just love it because of the performance is so brilliant, and I like the recording. So that's a great one. There's no harm in getting that recording, and if people comment on it as far as the recording is concerned, well, tell them to put on the Swan theme at the end and then be quiet. Again, it's not a tulip. Continuing on to what I consider the greatest symphony of the 20th century, Shostakovich's Symphony No. 10. So good that Karajan, who was very particular about what he recorded it twice. This is his analog version from 1967, which I much prefer over his digital version. The digital version is incredibly well played, like this one. The sound is not quite as good on vinyl, I don't think. This is a glorious sounding record. The brooding strings, the fabulous woodwind solos, the massive orchestral sonorities, the famous scherzo imitating Stalin. You've all heard it. It's fantastic, and nobody plays it better. There's a couple of parts in the scherzo, if you know how to read music and you can follow the score, where the strings subdivide the violins, violas, and cellos, and every one of those players is playing the hell out of it. And every time I hear other orchestras, it sounds really good, but the Berlin Phil, it's like everyone is a virtuoso. And this one's a tulip. So it's two. It is very warm and lush. It's very lovely recording. That's a winner. Another glorious recording by Karajan. This is Richard Strauss's Death and Transfiguration. And the four last songs, which everybody loves. This is with Gundula Janowitz. Here's Gundula. An absolutely magnificent artist. She's singing in one of the recommendations coming up. The four last songs is wonderful because Gundula Janowitz is kind of in between Elizabeth Schwarzkopf's more girlish voice, dare I say, and Jessie Norman's much more darker, massive sound when she sings it. And many people consider this the top recommendation. It is very beautiful. The recording is very good. Is the Totenverklarung as good as the Reiner classic Shaded Dog with the Vienna Phil? No, it's not as well recorded as that. But the playing on this recording is spectacular. There's a violin lick on every audition. They have it, 2 or 3 bars, very fast, triplets going from the top register down to the bottom, all over the place in kind of like arpeggios, just for the first and second violins. I've never heard it better. And I go straight to those 2 or 3 bars, every time I get a recording because I want to hear how the strings handle it. The Berlin Phil strings are unsurpassed. And then, of course, the crescendos in Totenverklarung as he transfigures from death to heaven, I think it is. I guess it is. It's just magnificent. That is a fantastic record. Audiophiles, you can buy that with impunity. This is a pretty easy recommendation. This is the famous 1962 recording of the Beethoven Ninth Symphonies. The playing is fantastic, classic Berlin Phil. The recordings are good. They tend to be a little bit glassy in some of the pressings. So, audiophiles, you'll have to kind of, if your setup is good, it should accommodate it. But there's a lovely warm sound to the recordings. Sometimes I said the strings get a little bit glassy when it gets exciting. 7th Symphony, 3rd Symphony. But it's you can get it for next to nothing on Discogs, and you've got 9 fantastic performances. The Pastoral is not the best as a performance, but the rest are very, very good. You won't find a better 3rd, and you won't find a better 7th. This one's a bit of a fudge. This is Brahms's 4 symphonies in the box set. This is from 1963 and 64. Yet this is the reissue. And this is from the famous Emil Berliner Studios. Let me see if that focus. There we go. And the Emil Berliner Studios are the ones that are doing the Deutsche Grammophones, the original source. So they were doing wonderful analog remasterings and recuttings even before that. And these are very good. So look, if you need a Brahms symphonies, you can get them for next to nothing. The 4 symphonies on Discogs, and they are incredible. The playing is, well, the Brahms playing is very specific. You've got to listen carefully for violas, oboes, and trombones when you're listening to Brahms. All the other orchestras from other countries can do the other stuff, but German oboes and German trombones, and the violas especially, you need the very best, and this orchestra has them. So if you can find this is not cheap on Discogs. It is really wonderful. Is it better than the originals? Yes. Will audiophiles enjoy it better? Yes. The bass is better, separation is better. But you can buy the originals for like $5 each and have $20 and have a great Brahms cycle, and it's very, very good. Is the Brahms 4 example as good as the Tchaikovsky Reiner with the Royal Philharmonic as a recording? No, that's a special recording. And the Royal Philharmonic's playing is wonderful, but it's not the Berlin Phil under Karajan. And even though that was Reiner's favorite recording, interesting enough. There you go. This is a very special box set. Karajan was kind of handcuffed by a lot of reviewers in the 70s and 80s, and they said he didn't do any modern music, and all he could do was, the classics, Strauss and Mahler, Beethoven and Brahms, and he did them extremely well. Yes, he did Mahler very well too. Some of you may have purchased the Mahler Fifth, the original source. It's very good. Check out my review on Audiophilia. Anyway, he came out with this box set. I think it was like 74, 72. And this is music by Schoenberg, Berg, and Webern. Now, I will tell you, it is the most accessible Schoenberg, Berg, and Webern. Some of the Schoenberg 12-tone stuff is a little bit dry. Berg less so, and Webern only wrote very short, very specific pieces. But the playing on this is so good. The Webern Passacaglia, which is his Opus 1, is so fantastic when I heard it. And the recording is so good. So you can buy this set. It's not too much money. I think it's 3 or 4 LPs. What do we got here? You see the programming. It's got Sibelius and Melisande and Verklartenacht, and not 12-tone. They're very chromatic and early Schoenberg. When we get to the variation for orchestra, then that's when things get really interesting. Alban Berg, one of my favorite composers, 12-tone from the start, but much more melodic. And then Webern, who I'm really starting to get into, very small, short pieces, and they're gorgeous. But his Passacaglia is very tonal, but the performance on this is spectacular. But it's also the recording, so you can buy that. You can enjoy 12-tone music, the Second Viennese School. You can enjoy the Berlin Phil, great conducting, and very good recording. And finally, the pièce de résistance. I've talked about this on 100 indispensable recordings chosen by a conductor. This is the Von Karajan ring. And the reason I chose this one is the sound is very good. It is not spotlit and bass light and over reverberant like a lot of his recordings. I think you have to worry a lot about the singers and their placement, so it was very good. Is it as good as Scholte's Decker? No, it's not as good as a recording. That's a very special John Culshaw produced recording. There's no doubt about it. But it is very good. What I love about this, and the singing on here is, there is no, who's the singer? Birgit Nilsson, the soprano. There's no Birgit Nilsson. But we get Helga Dernisch and we get Gundula Janovitz, very fine singing. The orchestral playing, sorry, Vienna Phil, but they just pip you to the post. There's some things in this that are just absolutely breathtaking. Sometimes when I listen to it, I still can't believe what I'm hearing. And, a lot of it's from Von Karajan. Someone said on YouTube that, Karajan was the Kanye West of conductors. I'm not sure what he meant by that, considering what I think about Kanye West. But Herbert Von Karajan conducts the Ring. How many hours of music? 12 hours of music from memory. And with the most exquisite interpretations. I'm not sure Kanye could do that. So anyway, That's a fantastic one. Now, a young gun writer, Ian Kershaw, heard this and loved it so much. My place, it's my nephew, he wanted to buy it. So he checked it out online. He found one for, I think it was $150. And he wanted to get it, but they wanted like $150 for shipping. So he kind of begged off and would borrow mine because it's very, very. I don't have the books and the records in here, but the four music dramas as Wagner calls them. But it's very heavy. But if you can find that, maybe local, and pick it up, I think you'll enjoy it. So there you go, some Herbert von Karajan's that audiophiles can enjoy. Are they Deckers at the very height of their powers? Are they EMIs from the early 70s with Previn? Nope, they're not. But the ones that I've showed you give you a little hint of what audiophiles can enjoy in Deutsche Grammophones. Many of those 300 records have been ruined by the maestro because, again, he's a conductor. A conductor is arrogant and thinks he knows everything. News at 10, what a surprise. Anyway, Karajan ruined a lot of his records, unfortunately. And Raina Meyer and Sydney Meyer at Emil Berliner Studios are doing absolute wonders with the original source and turning pretty well dogs into gold. So please, original source, maybe some of the ones I've recommended today, the Shostakovich 10 specifically, and Sibelius 5, they really would, even though they're very good recordings as such, they would really benefit from your treatment. Anyway, folks, hope everybody's well, enjoying life and having fun this summer. And please subscribe and like. We'd really appreciate it. It helps us out. We're nearly at 3,000 subscribers. And long live classical music and long live great recordings. Thanks very much for watching. See you in the next video. Bye-bye.